Hello and welcome to Tipsy Tolstoy, Russian literature for the inebriated.
I'm Matt Gerasimovich, a PhD student in Russian Lit. This week, having my recording sabotaged by the cicadas outside my window.
Sabotaged by the changing of the seasons, aren't we all? And I'm Cameron Lalana, and I don't have a fun fact this week, but I can't believe I've never told Matt this, but this week Matt learned from me very, very belatedly that he and I are the face of Russian study abroads for the UC school system. Because when I used to work in the UC Davis study abroad office, and obviously I was the first person to go through the program we did to Russia in so many years that they didn't have it on the website, and they forgot that it was one of our programs apparently. And so when I came back, they asked me if they could use a picture that I took there for something, and I said sure. And many months later, when I was helping a student on that webpage, I found out that a picture of Matt and I on the UCEAP webpage, we are the front figures for study abroad in Russia for the entirety of the UC school system. It's us, and it's a stock photo.
For clarification, I didn't go to a UC school. So you're welcome, California.
Matt, who has have you been to California? I assume you have at some point.
One time, and I almost died, but we have to say that for a bonus episode.
Yeah. So and also we just both look very. I don't know what it. There's a very weird vibe we're both giving off in that photo.
Hostage.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, not wrong.
Anyways, this is a podcast where me and my good pal Cameron get to unwind from our week with some Russian literature and a drink or two. This week, we're continuing our Summer of Anna Karenina series with part 7, or dare I say, the Karenining. I came up with that before recording, and I had to get it in there. This week, we are eternally grateful to Cole, our newest patron on patreon.com/tipsytolstoy. Thank you so much, Cole. And for the other listeners, if you're interested in supporting us on Patreon and you've enjoyed the series so far and you like what we do, go ahead and take a look. We have a lot of really fun Patreon-only things like bonus episodes, one set to drop pretty soon, notes on each story we read, and just in general, it's the most helpful thing you can do to keep the show running. If you're not interested in Patreon but would prefer to support us in a more free way, you can leave a nice review on Apple Podcasts or sign up for our email list on our website.
Yes, thank you for the updates. But before we get into the reading today, Matt, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a bourbon tonight called Contradiction.
Oh.
And that is because it had an elephant on the label, and I thought he looked cute. And I just feel just so bloated from all the beer I've been drinking. What about you?
Yeah, that's fair. I today have a selection from Trader Joe's because I'm a man of the people.
Yes, sure.
This is the Bosun Double IPA, a twin screw steamer. I don't know which part of that was the title, and I don't know which part of that is the classification.
I refuse to respond.
This thing is $5 for a 6-pack. And if you don't mind IPAs that are a little bit rough, it's really good. And usually I hate IPAs, so that's a pretty big compliment.
Okay. Well, I'll have to give it a try for $5.
Yeah.
You cannot beat that at Trader's.
You literally can't. I hate that you call it Traders, but we already covered that.
Well,
this week, part 7 of Anna Karenina, a deceptively eventful part of Anna Karenina. You really don't see the ending when you from the, well, I will say first 70 to 80 pages of this, even though we all know it's coming.
I really staked my claim that part 6 was the most important, and then I really forgot what was coming in part 7, which I shouldn't have because I've read this less than a year ago.
You've read this multiple times. This is your third read-through, I think, right?
Yeah, but I can't keep the parts straight, like what happens in what part, because, my guy loses me with the farming halfway through every time.
You just get so into it, you forget that there's anything else of import in this book.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's my favorite part. It's the farming, so.
Yeah, as it should be for all of us. Yeah, so we open up part 7 with another extended Levin scene. We get to see Levin in so many different environments. It's always good. Now we're seeing Levin as Levin and Kitty cohabitate now in Moscow while they wait for Kitty to give birth over the course of some number of months. So the majority of the first half of part 7 is just us following one of Levin's days. Levin is not feeling great hanging out in Moscow for so long, and Kitty understands how anxious he is, and it's something that kind of rubs her the wrong way. We open up with them discussing Levin's day. He's got a lot to do. They go over the fact that he has to go visit some people. He's got to go see Kitty's eldest sister, Natalie's husband, Lvov, or I forget his first name. He's only referred to by Lvov. He's got to go see a play with Natalie later in the day. Kitty really wants him to go see a mutual friend of theirs who he's never met before, but she insists that she really has to do it. Levin also is going to meet a sociologist, Metrov, who he met through a friend of his, Karavasov. He's got a day chock full of stuff, and he assures her, "Hey, I'm going to be back before dinner. I'll get your dad when he's at the club, the club everyone goes to, all the men, go to, and I'll be back. We'll have a good evening together." And she says, "Okay, sure," and he leaves. And then we spend so long detailing his day one to the next. He meets up with Katasov and Metrov, and initially they are introduced because Katasov really is intrigued by Levin's book on agriculture and the need to understand Russian laborers, not merely from the political economy perspective of, person and wage, but also in their environment. Metrov is also kind of, as a sociologist, writing on this, but he is a very strict political economist as the 19th century would have understood it. So as soon as Levin starts expounding on his ideas, Metrov immediately just gets into how much he does not agree and goes off on a tangent, and Levin, feeling stupid, immediately shuts up and does not even engage for the rest of the time they're together.
King. Don't back up your argument, just dissociate.
I wish that was a valid way to defend a thesis.
Tolstoy's saying it is, I think. I think that's what he's saying here. Certainly. Can't be anything else.
I think you're right on the right path with that one. So Levin, he does give some ground to Metrov. He still agrees with him, but he kind of comes to the conclusion that there's nothing to be gained from interaction between someone like Metrov, a political economist, and me. Well, I don't know how to define Levin, but we can't learn things from each other. We have to develop on different paths altogether. I don't know if that's necessarily the lesson you should take away from that, but that is the lesson he does. And he leaves that to go do something altogether more relaxing, going to visit Lvov, the husband of Kitty's eldest sister, Natalie.
Ah, you fool. You thought there was only two. No, you forget there was a third.
You forget that Natalie was the one that Levin was originally in love with before she got married, and then Dolly got married, and then he married married the youngest one with a suspicious age gap. Yeah. Oops. So he really enjoys Lvov's company. They just seem to understand each other. They're just some bros, doing dude things. They sit there, they trade compliments about Lvov's sons, who Lvov insists are, they're perfect, but they could be improved. And Levin tells him, I wish I could have sons like yours. And then Natalie joins the conversation, and we start getting into a discussion of what does it mean to raise kids. And they kind of talk about how in their day, the kids were put in the attic while the parents did whatever they wanted. Now it's gone to the other extreme where the parents go to the attic while the kids do whatever they want, which are, of course, the only two ways to raise kids.
Yeah, don't you hate that? Kids, huh?
Yeah. You just hate it. Natalie disagrees, and she says that, we shouldn't go to such extremes, but in fact, the way she lives is at one of those extremes. So just some kid raising discourse, as we love to have.
Some plenty of good parenting tips in this book.
Levin, especially the fact that the only important type of moral lesson the only important type of lesson for your kids is the moral lesson, and then everything else follows naturally after that. Levin, after that, goes with Natalie to go see a variant on King Lear, a sort of modern Russian piece of art, which Levin does not like. The fact that other people do like it really perplexes him. And later on, when he's discussing it with someone else, he finds himself basically saying things which he's heard being passed around, kind of intellectually lazily. They're all saying the same things in a circle to each other about this sort of thing. And speaking of intellectual laziness, he then decides to go to a club to meet with the prince, with Kitty's father, which is where I guess the kind of the cream, so to speak, of of Moscow society go to hang, where they just go eat, drink, play cards, read books. Everyone of importance, all the men of importance in this novel are there. Stiva, Vronsky, the prince, other people he just runs into. And although it should be awkward, the fact that Levin and Vronsky are both there, at this point, Levin, who has had quite a bit to drink, when he finally meets Vronsky after he's been at the club at some time, finds himself actually getting along with the man and actually quite liking him. So they keep on going about this this relatively pleasant interaction. They start playing cards. Levin loses 40 rubles in this process, which actually I should point out is important because Levin in earlier chapters was very concerned about money, about every single kopeck that he spends, but after spending so much time in Moscow, he's begun to think less carefully about money. First, when he spent 100 rubles, I had to change the 100 ruble bill to pay a bill. It hurt him, and the second time, it got a little bit easier, and the third time, it's practically nothing at all, and now he thinks nothing about paying 20 rubles just to go half a mile down the street in order to get somewhere by plow. So the Levin, who we cannot imagine spending 40 rubles on a card game in one afternoon, is now just throwing out money like crazy. And that also means that his financial straits are not as good as they once were. He's basically spent all of his savings in like the last couple of months. But even then, that's not even really concerning him all that much. He's thinking he's going to find a way. It's not something that's at the front of his mind, as Levin of prior eras would have. And Stiva, while they're playing cards, suddenly proposes that they go see Anna. Against his better judgment, I guess you could say, Levin decides, yeah, let's go see Anna.
What an agent of chaos, too. Like, what? How do you propose the exact worst thing in the world to do in every moment?
Well, first of all, how do you see like one of your closest friends, and then you see the man who his wife almost married, and you're like, hey, what if we all played cards together? And while you're already playing cards together with that group, you say, hey, let's go see the most socially isolated woman in the entirety of our city right now.
Let's.
Real powder keg.
Take us there, Cameron. How does it go?
It goes surprisingly well, actually. Well, Levin's there, at least. When he arrives, he sees the portrait that Mikhailov painted of Anna, and he is enraptured. This is a beautiful portrait, and when he turns around to see Anna in real life, it's not as grand, but she's got a vitality and personality and just a presence that makes her even more beautiful than the portrait is. They begin to talk, and Levin's really blown away by how much Anna is very natural. They seem to have a good flow. She's never awkward. They're always finding new things to talk about. He's impressed with the way that the trainer for Vronsky's horse is kind of a drunk, so Anna's kind of taken his kids under her wing. So she supports not only her own daughter, Anna, but also the daughter of the Englishman known as the English girl, only as the English girl. And they have actually a pretty good time. And Levin's really impressed with Anna. Levin goes home feeling great about this endeavor, being like, wow, how could anyone have hated Anna? I love Anna. This is awesome.
Talk about like the man who is like perhaps the worst judge of character. Like,
it's hard to beat that. I mean, given that he's still like Steve's best friend, I would think I would agree.
Yeah.
So he returns home, and this, as you might imagine, has gone way past when he was supposed to return. He was supposed to be back for dinner. He did not come back for dinner. In fact, he's come home very late in the evening. And Kitty is kind of sitting there like, hey, dude, what's up? You missed dinner. And also, I've been waiting for you for hours. And Levin recounts his day. He goes over all the features, the gambling, the fact that, he goes to meet the people who Kitty asked him to. But it's of so little consequence that it completely slipped my mind to mention that. It's like 3 pages of him feeling awkward before he leaves, and they are never mentioned again.
Oops.
He admits to her that not only has he not talked to Stiva as he was supposed to about getting Stiva's family out of financial straits because he's driven them into the ground, he instead went with Steva to go see the woman who is kind of common law married to the man that stilted Kitty. And in that moment, he realizes that was probably not my best call today. Of all the things I did that were not the best call, that was probably the worst one.
If there was a record scratch moment inside of Levin's head at any point in this book, it was probably right here.
Yeah. I think it says that Levin, who up to this point has wondered whether or not this is the right thing to do, finally decides that, in fact, yes, this was the wrong thing to do. So good timing on that one.
That's because he is irreparably dense.
Yeah, so Kitty's jealous. They have an argument. That's a very unsurprising series of events, I will say. Following this, we return back to Anna's perspective. Anna's walking around her house. She's alone. Vronsky isn't home yet, and she's thinking about how much she has captured the attention of Levin. And we find out now from her perspective that she knows the effect she had on Levin. In fact, went out to that meeting with the intention of creating that effect in him, and this has all been a very calculated thing for her. We find out that this is not quite a feel, well, if this is already not a feel good moment, it was already kind of a feel bad moment for a number of reasons, but now we now understand that this was not even just a genuine heart to heart. This was something that was kind of cynically engineered to a certain degree by Anna. As soon as Vronsky gets home, they launch into an argument. As we kind of come to realize, this is becoming more and more frequent, where Vronsky is staying away from home more and more often, and Anna is feeling more and more isolated because Vronsky, at one point she thought all she needed was Vronsky's love, and it turns out that, she probably needs more than that, first of all, but secondarily, she's not even getting his love anymore because he's just hanging out all day at the clubs with his buds, playing cards. So she is feeling not great, we'll say.
To say the least.
To say the least, yeah. We then come to one of the important moments in this book, when Levin wakes up one morning to find Kitty just sitting there, and she says to him, "Kostya, don't be frightened. It's all right, but I think we ought to send for Elizaveta Petrovna, who's the midwife," meaning that she is thinking she's going to give birth soon. And Levin freaks out, and he runs to go get the doctor, who's still asleep, and he then runs to go get some, is it opium that he gets?
Yep.
Yeah, he runs to go get opium, which is the number one thing you do want to give to a woman in labor. Mm-hmm. I am actually not a doctor. Maybe that is helpful. People who've taken opium while giving birth, let us know. Is that of use? It's one big cavalcade. He basically goes into kind of a fugue state for the full 22 hours that Kitty's giving birth, and he's worrying, and he gathers everyone, and he doesn't even know where he is from one moment to the next. It's a lot. He's very, very out of it. He's kind of chastising himself for inflicting this upon Kitty, the pain that she's in, which continues until finally she gives birth. Which is a very happy moment until the midwife cleans up and swallows the baby and gives it to him. And then he looks down at his son, who has caused him so much suffering and heartache and so many emotions in the last 22 hours. And he thinks, wow, this is an ugly kid. And he feels nothing but revulsion for him.
The guy doesn't even like the kid.
I have to imagine this is just something that Tolstoy went through in his own life, like with
I'm pretty
one
sure
of his kids, or maybe all of them. But yeah, he's looking at this kid. He's just like, this is an ugly, repulsive thing. And then he hands it over to Kitty, who is significantly more positive on their son. We don't entirely leave it there. He does, the kid, when he does hand it to Kitty, does sneeze. And he does feel what is described as a sense of a strange thrill of senseless joy and even pride that he felt when the baby sneezed, which... You do you, man, I guess. Find pride in your kids in whatever way you can.
I love this kid. He's the number one sneezer. Like father, like son.
We now join, for the first time for an extended period, Steva, who is actually in a bad way for once. He has spent all the money from selling that forest earlier in the book. He's even spent some of the advance the guy gave him. Dolly won't sign him over any more land because she wants him to stop selling her land and then spending it all on drink and affairs, which is fair.
Stiva? It's hard to believe.
I know. So he kind of is coming to the conclusion that, he's just going to have to get a new job. It's going to suck, but he's got to do it. So he does the very hard work of going to St. Petersburg to go see Karenin to try to get a better government position, which he can work without giving up his old position to earn about, 12,000 more rubles?
It doesn't matter. He's gonna spend it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. He points out that the job he holds right now is only enough to pay for his household expenses, which, holy God, if that's the household expenses alone, not even counting his just tendency towards buying anything that pleases him, I can't even imagine how much his household must cost. He goes to Karenin and tries to get him to put in a good word with some people. Karenin is not down for it, and the moment he hears that Stiva is doing this for a higher wage, goes off on government positions getting high wages, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, it's kind of a bust. So coming off of this incredibly successful attempt at getting a new job, Stiva then decides this is the perfect moment to bring up the fact that Karenin really should divorce his sister, which makes Karenin even angrier. And Stiva does this weird thing where he keeps trying to calm him down by putting his hand on Karenin's hand or putting his hand on Karenin's knee to calm him down, which I don't think this is intended to be. I don't think he was trying to seduce his brother-in-law, but I'm just saying it's not.
Unless
could have been. Times change, norms change. Still, I don't know. It's a little bit weird just putting your tenderly caressing your brother-in-law's knee, trying to get him to calm down. Could have been a seduction. Basically, Karenin tells him, "Come back later. I'll invite you back. We'll see about that." And Stiva goes on about his day, thinks about how good he feels in St. Petersburg, how it revitalizes him, and in Moscow sometimes he shockingly feels so tired that he doesn't even enjoy the company of young women, if you can believe it. And that's not a problem he has at all in St. Petersburg. Not for a single moment does he think, I won't cheat on my wife today in this revitalizing city. This enjoyment is interrupted by being invited back to Karenin's house, and he now rejoins Karenin, Countess Ivanovna, and a French psychic, who is there to give him, basically is there to get guidance on what he should do. And Stiva, Ivanovna, and Karenin have a very, very awkward conversation about religion, where basically all you need to know is that Stiva, the ultimate agnostic, is trying to get along with the two of them, and Ivanovna and Alexei are now very, very hardline literalist Christians. That is guiding everything they do, and that keeps going on until the Frenchman falls asleep and begins to give his very indirect prediction, which ends up being Karenin is not going to divorce his wife, essentially.
It's amazing that Tolstoy can make you side with Stiva in an argument about religion.
It's truly the work of a master writer that we can walk away after everything else Stiva has done in the last 3 pages and think, wow, I feel I've been in Stiva's shoes. That sucks for him. Yeah, but very... At one point, he even says he tries to make a light jest of, what is faith if that works? And then Alexei and Ivanovna both go off on him for believing that, about how that's not really scriptural, etc., etc.
Got
him. What harm has been done by the false interpretation of that passage, Alexei says. Nothing holds men back from belief like that misinterpretation. I have no words, so I cannot believe. Yet that is not said anywhere. It's just the opposite, he says to him, in just the awkwardest conversation while they wait for a psychic to fall asleep to figure out whether or not he should divorce his wife.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not funny, but it's a little funny.
It's not supposed to be funny. We're supposed to be seeing an Alexei Karenin who has been... The empathy which he showed, which I think is his apex early on when Anna is dying, has been thoroughly driven out of him by the influence of hardline Christianity and Countess Ivanovna, although that's kind of one of the same with the hardline Christianity thing.
Yeah, this is a low point in the story for basically everybody.
Yeah. Speaking of low points, we now rejoin Anna and Vronsky, mostly Anna, as she's walking around thinking about her life. and it's not going well. Every single time Anna and Vronsky get together, they just end up arguing. Even when they both kind of know that they're about to head into an argument and they want to pull back because they want to show the other they love them, they can't. They just keep walking back into it and they keep making it worse. And it gets to the point where Anna feels like it's just things can't get better from here, and she decides, I'm going to kill myself. There's nothing left for me. I gave up my love of my son for the love of a man who's clearly doesn't love me anymore. He must be falling in love with other women. He loves me less than he used to. Where is he turning that love to? His mother is trying to get him to marry Princess Sorokina, and he's going to go visit his mother next Monday, and he won't go with me to the countryside on Monday, so maybe he is going to marry Sorokina. And it just makes every argument worse and worse, and they keep almost making up, then breaking off into a worse argument, which continues for 30 pages until finally just Vronsky decides, I've had enough, I can't do this anymore, and he just leaves. And Anna sitting there hoping that he'll come back and decide, you know what, Anna, I do love you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, let's make up. But Vronsky doesn't. So she decides to go somewhere. It doesn't really matter. She's going into the train station, and she goes to visit Dolly, intending to fall upon Dolly and apologize to her and confess to her that her life is horrid, everything is bad, and she doesn't know what to do. When she gets there, however, she decides Dolly is kind of speaking with her and admits to her that Kitty's there but won't see Anna. And Anna says, no, is something wrong? Have her come out to me. And Kitty, reluctantly at Dolly's behest, decides to come visit her, or at least just say hi, essentially. And they have a weird moment where Kitty looks into Anna and thinks that she should have antagonism to this woman, and there should be a conflict between how much she hates her and she just has like a desire to be nice to people. But when she sees Anna, all those feelings just disappear. And like everyone else who meets Anna, she just kind of falls in love. And they speak. They speak of Kitty's... she's currently kind of ill, recuperating from the birth of her son. They talk about her son. They talk about Stiva. But nothing is interesting to Anna. So she says, I came to say goodbye. I'm very glad I've seen you. I heard everyone likes you. And I like you, and I like your husband too. And remember me to him.
I love how they set off the alarm to nobody. She was like, I'm saying goodbye. And Dolly's like, to where are you going? And she doesn't answer. And Dolly's like, okay.
It's weird that you keep saying goodbye to me before you look at like you want to say something before saying goodbye again. And are like, yeah, I'll never see you again.
Unbelievably bad friend.
Yeah. So following that, she goes to get on the train, caring not where she goes, and surrounded by people having inane conversations, which only bothers her. By the time the train gets to the next stop, she decides there's only one thing to be done, and lets the train start to leave without her, and as the train takes off, she throws herself under the wheels. And part 7 ends on this line. In the light of the candle by which she had read the book, filled with troubles, falsehoods, sorrow and evil flared up more brightly than ever before, lighted up for her all that had been shrouded in darkness, flickered, began to grow dim, and was quenched forever.
Part 7.
That's not the end of the book. You might think this is where the book ends, right? This is where all the movies end.
Oh, you might think. Oh, we have more wheat. We have more wheat to plow.
Like every other part, the first half is deceptive because so little of real import, although in another way, so many things of great import happen, that you wouldn't think this is the part where an entire plot line of this novel just ends.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah. So, Matt,
if you've
had a lot of thought. Yeah. Sorry. Spoiler alert. Anna dies. Matt, you've had a lot of thoughts about this part.
I do, of course.
I know you're always surprised when you get here, but there's a lot going on here.
So, starting with Levin's day out, Levin's day in the town, Levin's day on the prowl, whatever you prefer. I like none of those. You kind of like... It's my view. This is how I understand a lot of Tolstoy. This is just a lot of examples of the same thing over and over and over and over. His agricultural book that he's set out to write, he wants to write the definitive book on agriculture. Well, there is no definitive book that can be written on agriculture because you can't really understand humans as a whole. And that's kind of what he's coming to in this argument with these two other people. he's arguing against this kind of rationalist understanding of development, of farming, of literally anything you can think of. And Levin's saying, no, human cultural factors, these are all what are really important. A humanities boy after my own heart here. And later notes are actually a really fair critique of political economy of this time, saying that, well, rents and capital don't exist in most parts of Russia at this point in time like they do in Western Europe. So you're applying a theory that doesn't even really work here. So it's kind of the conclusion, or what will lead to the conclusion of him here. And question that I posed to myself, because this is actually an important part, I think, kind of, sort of. How does Levin's formulation of his farming theories actually relate to his formulation of an ethical theory? And they're very much connected, I think. I think that he's kind of saying that at the heart of everything, there is some humanness to it that is difficult to understand on a totalizing basis. And so the same reasons that you can't say just, okay, implement this technology, you'll have a successful farm. That's the same exact reason that you can't say, okay, just do these things and you'll have a successful marriage. Everything is different than it will be for someone else. And that's kind of how I think Tolstoy is combining farming and basically all aspects of life. It might sound like kind of a stretch, but I don't know. That's kind of what I feel about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's interesting that when he comes, he clearly disagrees, and Tolstoy clearly disagrees with this point that Metrov is trying to make. But he despite his disagreement, he never really kind of comes to the point where he's like, well, Metrov is wrong. He's just kind of saying, well, I don't think he can fully apply his theories, which may be correct in other environments here. And what he says is we need to develop our theories in our own parallels because we can't learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that he leaves room for Metrov to be right in a certain area, in his own way. And maybe if he goes along far enough, he'll develop the correct theory, but it just will not be, it's just his theories will never be compatible in meaningful in relation to Levin's ideas and Tolstoy's ideas, really.
Sure. And it's basically the same thing at the concert where Levin is just absolutely insufferable to everybody around him, talking about why he doesn't like it, because he says that Wagner and all of his followers are trying to take music into the sphere of another art, and same thing happens with poetry. It goes wrong when it tries to paint a face. Basically, what he's saying is that theories don't need to be complex. Theories should be simple. The simpler something is, the better the explanation or the theory is, just for simplicity's sake, basically. And that's kind of the gist of the first part, I feel like. That's like Levin's own personal spiritual journey, like his self-contained journey, and then it splits into the Anna stuff. But that's kind of what like most of this book is for Levin. To me, it seems like a lot of this very similar things happening over and over for him to test basically these different theories on and see what he can come up with. And he's finally starting to get closer to his truth.
Well, I think it's interesting. You can almost look at it as like different rings, and that, okay, first he begins with the laborer, working among the laborers, developing those ideas. Then he kind of works the edges into a finer point by working with other noblemen of his own class. And then finally, he's trying to bring it to the intelligentsia of Moscow. And now, up to this point, this kind of searching has been, I would say he's had his most certainty here. And in any other place, he's always been certain, of course, but people have kind of come back to him and he's gotten involved in arguments. But I think it's notable in this one that he is not interested in arguing for the most part. When someone starts saying something contrary to him, he just kind of begins to shut up and says to himself, okay, well, they clearly don't understand. I don't feel any need for myself to justify my ideas to them.
Yeah. But then everything changes with Stiva and Levin's visit to Anna's. Well, we've already covered that Levin's a bad judge of character, right?
Yep.
So, I think this is interesting. Actually, Levin falls for the same exact thing in Stiva, basically, that he does in Anna. Well, kind of. Well, that's actually probably not really true. But I just think it's interesting that Tolstoy kind of wrote these family characters that have like the same kind of magnetism. And Levin so clearly falls under that with both of them here. More so, I guess, with Anna. I mean, Anna's basically just trying to seduce him for 20 pages, however long he's there.
Yep.
Levin is checking Anna out. She's enjoying it. But then Levin also does notice that like something's like a little off, but he's too dense for that to actually register for him, I think. I have a quote when Anna's leaning over and talking to Steve about something else. She says, the narrator says, her face, so beautiful a moment before in its repose, suddenly wore a look of strange curiosity, anger, and pride. And so this only lasts a second, but you can tell like there's something a little bit weird with her going on. And yeah, but he at the same time, like, so he notices something's a little bit weird, but at the same time, he's just enjoying the attention that he's getting from Anna. And she's very clearly won him over. Everybody realizes that. Steve realizes it. Anna realizes it, which is why she later, I think, goes to Kitty and Dolly potentially. I mean, we can jump to that if you want.
Yeah, please.
It kind of, that's why I had to like separate it, because I feel like these parts actually all really lead to each other in that. So when she goes to say goodbye to Dolly and she knows Kitty's there, I'm pretty sure. And the thing she says to Kitty is, "Yes, I'm very glad to have seen you," she said with a smile. "I've heard so much of you from everyone, even from your husband. He came to see me and I liked him very much." The narrator says she said unmistakably with malicious intent. That wasn't like oh yes, I know who you are. I think that was a malicious jab. But yeah, I think you have to understand where Anna's coming from. And this is where a really interesting thing happens in my mind. And this is something that was pointed out to me by a very smart professor when she was talking about differences between Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. And she was posing the question, do they have more similarities than we think? And everybody likes to pose them as some sort of dichotomy and whatnot. But everyone seems to also forget about the end of Anna Karenina. This is a really dark ending to this part. Not just the suicide, but everything that leads to it. And how she ends, like her mental state right before killing herself is bad, like very evil in a very sort of way. She does a really pretty lengthy internal monologue, just very hateful. Everyone is hateful. She comes to the conclusion that basically everyone is trying to take her shirt off her back, and she's trying to take everyone else's shirt off everyone else's back. Like that's the truth. That's her truth that she lands on, and it's a much different truth than Levin. And so, in a way, I guess I don't know if I have the answer to this Tolstoy Dostoevsky question. I thought I would pose it since there are a lot of interested Dostoevsky listeners I know. Obviously, Dostoevsky writes about sections of society that Tolstoy does not. But do they deal with similar questions of morality and evil? I think so. And I think this ending is a pretty significant one that, I don't know, Dostoevsky has a lot of, or can in parts have hope, redemption. There is no hope or redemption here for Anna at all in her mind by the end of this. So I don't know where that leaves you, but it always leaves me feeling bad after I read it.
I think to your point about the parallels between Anna and Levin being, although I think Dostoevsky, Tolstoy very much intended for it to be a dichotomy. This is kind of a morality tale that if you do pursue what Anna does, you will come to this kind of end. You're going to end with thinking the world's evil and there's nothing it can give you. You're going to have a bad end versus Levin, who doesn't always have an easy time of things, and certainly Tolstoy would be no stranger to that, but ultimately he does have a more hopeful ending. But I think the problem for Tolstoy in trying to tell this morality tale is that he was too good at providing a good look into Anna's mind, because you walk away from this not as, it doesn't feel like even though it's very clearly supposed to be like a condemning tale, you feel sadness more so for Anna. Like in the same way that in The Lady and the Dog, I think that, oh God, who wrote that?
Chekhov.
In the same way that it's been commented that Chekhov was trying to write a better ending for Anna in The Lady and the Dog, you see very much, I think when you can walk away from this sympathizing with Anna to that extent, even though when she is trying to lash out, when she's trying to kind of hurt the people around her, like you said, she says that malicious, she says, remember me to your husband, essentially as a jab to Kitty. Kitty looks back to her and says, yeah, I will, naively. She says it naively, like she doesn't get that she's being attacked, and no one understands Anna. And I think that is supposed to be something that is condemning about her, because she has made so many choices which separate her so much from everyone else that she's become so alienated, and that's a bad thing. But the thing is that sometimes I think people can easily relate to a feeling of alienation, like the people around them don't understand them. And he did such a good job of writing to her into this corner that you feel more so sympathy. Like it is like obviously she's not a perfect person. No one in this novel is. No one's a perfect person, and you can't get away from the feeling that she doesn't deserve it. Because everyone in this novel does bad things, but for her, it's specifically she was unlucky enough that her decisions took her into the spiral, whereas other people had certain characteristics which, although they share her features to a great deal, they are able to escape. I mean, when we follow her fighting with Vronsky, like the loss of love, I think her jealousy is posed as a bad thing, and that it is detrimental. But that's another parallel you can look to between Levin and Kitty and Anna and Vronsky, whereas Levin is someone who is full of jealousy, but because Kitty is essentially proves him wrong, and he's able to struggle around to being less jealous, although that's still something he struggles with. It's portrayed as something that's obviously bad. Anna, she's jealous, and it's portrayed as bad, but she's not entirely wrong, per se. I mean, he points at many points that when she feels that Vronsky loves her less, he does. He does feel like he has made the wrong decision, and he's trying to escape her more and more, and their constant fights make him more and more estranged from her. Her understanding is obviously driving this tendency, but it's not wrong in the way she's looking at it, in the same way that you still see that same problems for Levin, but he was in fact wrong, and that's kind of what pulls him out of it.
Yeah, it's still a question that I haven't been able to totally reconcile myself while reading. Why does Anna not get a happy ending, but Levin does? I know why Tolstoy wrote it. It was with the intention of showing, I think, that if you do something bad, then something bad happens to you, and it's just kind of simple as that. Or so he says, I think, later in life. I mean, not that simply, but yeah, you get the gist. I just don't really agree with that. I think the epigraph to the novel is still very interesting here. Vengeance is mine, I will repay. Well, who is repaying? Is God repaying? Is Tolstoy repaying? Because it really seems mostly like Tolstoy is repaying in this novel, of course. And yeah, like you said, it's pretty tough, I think, not to sympathize with Anna's predicament, especially at the very end, right before, or I guess during her jumping under the train, where her last feeling is regret. I don't know how you can't sympathize with her. Well, in multiple places, but definitely there.
That's what I think. That's what I think the basic problem for Tolstoy is that he's trying to write a morality tale, but he is someone who is too good at portraying character motivations. And that if you wanted to write a better morality tale, you'd write, for this era, you'd write, okay, this is a fallen woman, she's bad, whatever. But Tolstoy can't help but not want to engage with that psychology, it seems, and just work through it. And the more he works through it, the more you empathize with someone as a human being going through a very complex and understandable set of emotions. So he's trying to basically other her as like a lesson, but you can't look at her as anything else other than what she is, which is a very compelling, a very charismatic, and a very imperfect person, which is a very, I think, interesting and compelling thing. I mean, that's why Levin's interesting, because he's, well, I wouldn't say he's compelling exactly, but he's very imperfect, but he's really, really self-aware in a way that's pretty rare in literature, and that's what drives them on, is we got one character who is compelling and frankly not all that self-aware, and we've got one character who is not all that compelling but is driven by that self-awareness. So it's like you're seeing the same life lived out by two people who are not altogether different. I mean, Levin's he's a handsome, fit guy, which is not as comparable to Anna's beauty. People instantly fall in love with her, but their features are really, really comparable. But it's really, I think, the fact that he has an ability to self-reflect, which Anna does not have, kind of leads them very much down very, very different paths, despite the immense number of parallels in their lives.
I didn't even talk about the plot lines. You mentioned it for me. I just wanted to point out briefly, It took 7 parts for Tolstoy to make his 2 protagonists connect, and almost all the way through the 7th. Right? Am I right? Did I miss something?
You're right. No, that's like 840 pages in, 830 pages in.
Yeah, like, woo.
Sorry, no, like 780, but still far in.
Yeah. I don't have something super smart to say on this point, just that, it's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, there's, as much as I sometimes want to clown on just spending 60 pages talking through the details of Levin's day, including the details that Levin himself don't think matter, like meeting Count and Countess Bull at their home, where he does not want to be. He's only there at the behest of Kitty. He makes some awkward small talk, and then he leaves. It truly didn't need to happen, and yet it's there. And I think that's something that is really has drawn me to this novel, because we're really just watching 2 lives. We're watching many lives in parallel, but each of these stories is so much less interesting without the other to contrast it. I mean, Anna's life is just one of continuous drama, and I see why it's the one that's adapted, but it loses so much of its meaning in its drama when it's not contrasted against Levin's, frankly, pretty boring life.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I will continue to dislike Joe Wright's adaptation. But that's it's just me.
We demand the Levin cut, where we only have.
I want the Levin cut.
The version of Anna Karenina only focusing on Levin scenes.
Yes, I would like that, or I would just like an 8-hour movie,
like that old Soviet War and Peace, where they just,
like the War and Peace, exactly.
It's a shame the Soviet Union didn't make like their version of Anna Karenina didn't go the full 9 miles, because if that 8-hour War and Peace, which is so expensive that it literally could never be recreated because of the combined value of putting the Red Army up to it and taking all this stuff they had out of museums and these original buildings. They had the capital, the human capital. They had the relics that could have gone into making a truly incredible film. But
and they had someone who greenlit an 8-hour film. So I mean, hey, what couldn't they do for films?
I know.
Well, we should probably wrap it up there. But before we totally do, Cameron, on a scale from 1 to Yeltsin, how drunk are you?
I'm gonna say I'm a good 4. The bosun is about 8.5%, so it is not. Yeah, it'll get you there for $5.
Sure,
it's a good deal. How about you?
I think I might up you. I think I might be around a 5 or so. Just
nice
straight bourbon. We'll do that to you.
It's at the same level of intoxication that Anna is on any given night when she just starts pumping opium to fall asleep.
It could be. Boy, it could be.
All right. Well, Matt, what are we reading in our next episode?
Hard to believe, but we are actually going to finish up the Karenining Part 8 of Anna Karenina. I promise it's the last time I will talk about plot lines or not about farming. Or really probably not the last time I'll talk about plot lines, but it's going to be a good one. It'll be the conclusion to our Summer of Anna Karenina series. And then we will take a break from novels and we will go back to some more short stories and whatnot. We've got all that info in our Discord, on our website. So check it out.
Absolutely. It's been a wild ride, and you might think it's over, but this is Tolstoy. Of course it's not over. It's never over. That's the main challenge of our lives.
Plus now we get to reference it when we talk about any other piece of literature, because Tolstoy his influence seeps everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
Before we let you go, we want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our current patrons. We've got Jeff, Janice, Anne, Emily, Jesse, Madeline, Alex, Daniel, Irini, Paige, Darren, Larkin, Lou, Brandon, Allison, Gary, Cole, Daniel, Jack, Alex, and Roland. Getting to the end of my breath there.
I'm so glad you can still do that in one breath.
Just barely. Podcasting isn't free, and grad school doesn't pay very well. So if you're interested in joining with our current patrons to keep the show running, take a look at patreon.com/tipsytolstoy.
The music used in this episode was Soviet March by Toasted Tomatoes. You can find more of their stuff on toastedtomatoes.bandcamp.com and also on YouTube under the same username. If you're looking for other places to find us, you can also follow us on Instagram at Tipsy Tolstoy Podcast or join our email list on our website, tipsytolstoy.com.
You'll hear from us again soon.